Welcome to Cannoncast, the Cannonball Festival podcast where you can meet the artists of the festival one-on-one. Cannonball is a performing arts festival in Philadelphia and is a hub of the Philadelphia Fringe Festival. We present new and groundbreaking work from local, national, and international artists working in dance, theater, circus, and other performing arts. Today, I speak with Taj Rauch, one of the awardees of Cannonball's immersive track. We're talking about his show, Afterworlds. What's the name of the show that you're working on?
Right, so I'm working on Afterworlds. It's based on it started out as something I was writing a little over a year ago before my last show that I put up through Cannonball last fall. It started out as this thing that I felt like I needed to write, and it was just originally in the form of an epic poem in the second person, and then it evolved to become this narrative that I turned into something immersive. So that's what I'm putting up in Icebox this fall. And aside from that, I'm also co-heading the immersive track. And that's been a pleasure too, to just come from a lane of diving headfirst into immersive as of 2023, really getting obsessed with that. And now trying to figure out can I be of help to other folks, also trying to find their footing in a medium that still doesn't know itself fully,
Yeah, excellent. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, that's like the Roadrunner looking down over the... Don't let me tell you it's a lot of work. It's a normal amount of work.
Yeah, no, real talk. It's and once you look down, you realize that you've been running out.
Oh my God, I'm tired.
It reminds me, I don't play this, but I love the lore. My friends tell me about Warhammer 40K, and they talk about those orcs that believe in things that if they believe something, it is true. So God. They paint their cars red, and therefore they go fast because they believe red makes you go fast. But as a whole species, apparently they're just really dumb, so they believe in the dumbest stuff. And when I think of what you just said with the Roadrunner, I'm yeah, I believe in myself until I look down, and then I believe I will fall. Yeah. So
how swiftly these beliefs change.
Yeah.
I'm curious about going back to our conversation about AI that we were talking about before we started recording. How do you feel like it interacts with any part of your creative process, but maybe specifically game creation? Do you use it for bouncing ideas off for immersive things?
Yes. Ideas, it's always useful. I'll say two parts. One is ideas, and two is cleanup or streamlining a process. So in terms of ideas, it's great. I specifically love preliminary ideas of I'm obsessed with this type of folklore or this why or meaning. What are some ways that we can make the the story of the Minotaur immersive, right? And and I think there was, in going back and forth with that, I ended up that is an exact example to how I ended up making an AR experience, augmented reality, where someone is in a maze, but they are blindfolded, and then the audience around them has to look at this live-streamed screen share from the phone that the person is on in the augmented reality game. And the audience tells them, turn left, turn right, move forward, and that's how they get through this maze. But that was all originally inspired by this Minotaur thing. Ended up not being about the Minotaur at all. Ended up being more about this weird eldritch sort of liminal abyss of a maze. But it's that, where it's sometimes, and I think about this with writing too, sometimes you're staring at a blank page and weird tangent, very short, but the end of Neon Genesis Evangelion, the last episode talks about this too, where the kid is he feels like he's going crazy and he doesn't know himself. And he's going through this therapy session, and the therapist or narrator or whatever is okay, you want freedom. I got you. Here is freedom. It is you in a white space, white void, absolute nothing. And the guy's okay, freedom, this is nice, but I don't know what to do. It was like, got you. Here, let me help you. I'm going to draw a line. Now you fall. Now there's a ground. You have lost freedom, but you have gained direction.
Yeah.
Now you can walk left and right along this line, which is your floor. But you have lost the ability to be weightless, right? The more lines and et cetera that are added, the more direction you're given, and an absence of freedom. But sometimes that's what we need. So like when looking at a blank page versus a page with lines, blue lines, now I know where to write. Or in this circumstance of like talking with AI, it's like in this back and forth, suddenly I find a sense of direction amidst the myriad of ideas that we all have, right?
Yeah.
So that's one. Another one is also narrative branching. Let's put a pin in that, because I do have something about, like, there's something called procedural generation, and soon there's going to be something called procedurally generated narrative. I guarantee that's going to blow up soon. So that's a big thing that I would love to talk about, but that is another way that AI helps is like choose your own adventure stuff. Narrative branches, AI is great for that. But before we go into any of that, the other side of it is like clean up and streamlining the process. Recently, I've been using. People don't often associate AI with some of the tech tools we've been using for 20 years. Content aware fill, that's AI, right? That's in Photoshop. We've been using that forever. Recently, I've been using AI motion capture. You can use a single camera, your phone, record a body moving, and you can generate, using AI, a skeletal rig that is a 3D mesh that can be imported into whatever software and attached to another thing. Instead of, which I suck at, animating frame by frame and moving body parts where they're supposed to, one, that takes forever, and two, it probably won't feel as organic as an actual capturing of a body. So things like that, I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Tell me more about narrative branching.
Okay, so in game design, there's something called procedural narrative, which is you have a chair, and that chair has 3 legs, or 4 legs, or somehow 1 leg, or what have you. A back, no back. Is it a stool? Is it a this? All these parameters, we can call them variables. So when you tell when you use procedural generation in game design, you can have a whole world that is populated by many chairs, many trees, what have you, that all are instantly generated or quickly generated using the variables that you gave it. So it's like, make me 50 chairs using 200 variables. This type of back, this type of scale, this many legs, etc. It will come up with and populate a world with that many things. Okay, what the fuck am I talking about? So that is procedural generation. That's how that works with world design. Games like No Man's Sky do that really well. That's how they like come up with whole universes of like, this is a world that was instantly generated just for you, utilizing a whole bunch of variables that we already had preset. Early, what made me really first have my mind blown by this was actually Borderlands, the first one. It's a narrative game, but the way they used proc gen was when you open gun chests or weapon chests. Often you would play with other players, and the weapon that you would get, or tool, or what have you, is unique to you. Or basically, most of the time, you would find things that no one else in multiplayer would have. That's because they were using proc gen to have these variables go into one thing that you would get. I think that's brilliant. So as I'm seeing that evolve, I'm also seeing there's this rise of, it's not being implemented yet, but I guarantee you it's going to come, procedurally generated narrative. Long story short, NVIDIA right now is working on this, and I think this is going to be very interesting depending on how they do it. There's a right way and a wrong way, and you can infer based off of how I describe this, but you're in let's say you walk into a barkeep, and you're in an RPG, and you talk to the bartender, and in every game that we've played, Skyrim, what have you, you talk to the bartender has 3 lines of dialogue as a preset thing. You can go into A, B, or C. When you go into A, B, or C, A has a whole nother A, B, or C attached to it. You can go into those, and then usually on that second tier of A, B, and C, whichever you choose, has a final A for each. So in total, we're looking at 20 max permutations or options of dialogue for the bartender. It's immersive and feels like I have all these things that I can access and have a unique conversation with the bartender. But you play RPGs enough, and for the most part, you're going to, especially after we replay Mass Effect 2 for the umpteenth time, because it's amazing, you're going to explore all the dialogue options, and that's cool. Procedurally generated narrative allows for the possibility of us to have infinitely replayable stories with infinitely unique experiences. The reason is, using LLMs, things like ChatGPT and etc., they would have remote LLMs acting as or installed in every NPC in the world of the game. So when you're discussing things with the barkeep, there is an infinitely replayable conversation, because you can have a new conversation every time with this barkeep, or with that shop merchant, or with this CEO that you're trying to talk to about blah, blah, blah. The bad version of this is it makes narrative design a little too easy. The good version of this is if you write enough of your own content as a show Bible of sorts, and you give that to the LLM to only stick to, the LLM can infinitely call back to this show Bible in every response that it gives the player. I love that. I think that's brilliant. Yeah.
It sounds like as long as it is anchored around like a set of rules that you give it like certain bounds, you sort of like draw the line for it to fall around, kind of thing.
Yeah. As long as you draw the guardrails, I think that what you're saying is what would be preferable, especially for most game designers too.
Well, it's funny because we were joking about Roadrunner earlier, and I remember seeing there's that a while ago it circulated online, like the list of like 20 rules for Roadrunner. Have you seen that?
I have not.
It's a list of like anything can happen in a Roadrunner cartoon, but the following rules need to be followed. The Roadrunner always stays on the road, otherwise he's not a Roadrunner. They can only use objects from Acme corporations. The coyote only fails because of his own character flaws, basically. The only thing that the Roadrunners can say is meep meep. Meep meep. And there's like 15 or so of those rules, but I thought that was such an interesting parameter to like build around. Like there's certain pylons that which sort of feels like the show Bible or the.
It is. That's brilliant. That's exactly, because it's not just randomization. Because procedural generation is all inspired by RNGs, random number generators. It's the reason that tabletop uses die, right? Like at the end of the day, a dice is a RNG. It is giving you a 1 through a 6, and from that, many options can be had. That sort of thing is cool for randomization because it's refreshing, it allows for free will, but what is the point of free will, going back to White Void? What is the point if we're just weightless, existing with really no purpose, right?
It's interesting that you mentioned an RNG as a source of free will. I feel like I so often think of a dice or a random number generator as an indicator of like fate or the things that are out of our control.
That's fair.
But I feel like, tell me more about it, like as a source of free will.
Well, I think it's the free will that you act because of or within the numbers. But the numbers allow for not infinite, but a plethora of more options for you to then act in. It's like, you know, you want to do this thing, you roll a 6, you do the thing, that's great. How do you feel? What do you do because of that? Versus like you roll a 1, you trip on a branch, and then you fuck yourself, you know? And it's like, it allows more options, like the ground in that weightless example. It allows more inspiration, because what we are as human, that sets us apart from whatever AI could ever be. What we are is imaginative. We're creative, but we're creative because of external stimuli. So we need rules, a show Bible, 20 rules, to gain inspiration and know the world and know ourselves. I love that, like the Acme Corporation. That's just good world building. The Acme Corporation example. You know, it's just like if it was any company or anything, not even a company, there's nothing meaningful to tie ourselves to.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too that it's like the Acme thing gains meaning just through repetition, just through the fact that it is the source of all the things that they buy. And then it becomes like a reference in like the default outside world, people are like, oh, Acme, oh, Roadrunner. Even though it's just been a thing that's repeated, that everything comes from Acme, it sort of starts to make its own meaning just by having repeated itself a bunch of times.
It does. It makes its own meaning and makes its own lore too.
Yeah.
I think about this with like, I was having this conversation yesterday. Here's a hot take. I think Kendrick Lamar and Tyler. Love them both. Tyler the Creator, Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar is a better lyricist. That's period. I know that. But Tyler the Creator, and maybe I'm biased. I'm biased towards both. But maybe I'm biased because I've been listening to Tyler since I was in middle school. But Tyler the Creator is a better world builder than Kendrick. And Kendrick put out Damn, which is its own narrative world building album. Brilliant. So is T-Pimp. Don't get it twisted. But as a world builder, Tyler has this whole Camp Flog Gnaw that is this like thing that there's like an album with him in school talking to a therapist that ends up actually being another alter ego of himself. Then he's in camp with his friends and blah, blah, blah. He's been building worlds across albums. Then he like is finished with that world and goes on to other stuff. But that world building, he instills in other practices, not just music. He has his own fashion line, which is practically a fashion empire. And everything from golf, the fashion line, actually feels like it could live in his world of Camp Flog Gnaw. I say all this to say that Acme that people see, and there's a lore that is participated in when people wear things that are, golf or what have you. And that's cool. It's like you start to participate in a world that you thought was just fiction. And I think that's makes it more meaningful.
Yeah. Damn, I did not know that.
What, Tyler?
I haven't listened to any either his or Kendrick Lamar's music.
They're both incredible.
Yeah.
Tyler was, and I appreciate this side of him too. Tyler was a lot of his early music was very shock value driven. Someone asked him recently, like, what are you ashamed of that? Do you regret that? And he's like, absolutely not. Go ahead.
What a dumb, just so much, like Lady Gaga did the same where she was like trying to be deliberately shocking. And I feel like you have to do that to catch attention in a pop culture world. You have to do something shocking deliberately. Yeah. And I feel it's just one of those things where like the culture, if there is like a monolith, simultaneously is like, wow, that thing was so cool. Do you feel ashamed of it? Like, I'm looking. Are you ashamed that like you made me look? Are you embarrassed of the things that you had to do to catch my attention? And it's like, why would I be? Yeah, you wouldn't have looked either way.
I completely agree. I think Lady Gaga is a perfect example too. Yeah. And I think part of the shock value thing about this is like you're like shouting into the void to hear the echo come back. You want to know yourself. And like linking it back to game design, early open world games, or even now, when a game says it's open world, first thing I do, and I love to see this in people in real life too, in immersive events, first thing that I do, I say, you said open world? How open? Where is the invisible wall? When you reach the invisible wall that maybe is like a whole mile in-game out if you're in Red Dead or something like that, when you reach the invisible wall, is it just an invisible wall, or is it, I don't know, a castle wall that you just can't get past? What's the narrative justifications? Blah, blah, blah. But in doing all this back and forth, you're like testing your identity, your free will, against the confines of your environment. And that's exactly what a meat dress is. I love that.
What were some of the things that Tyler the Creator was being like referenced when they said, "Oh, that's too," or "Are you embarrassed of how shocking this was?" Or what were some of the things
when he was younger, he said very outlandish things, and it's interesting too because like he even was saying homophobic things, and he is gay himself. And it's like, this is also, his whole crew was wild at the time because he was running with Frank Ocean. So they were both like, I remember Frank had a line on a song from like 2011 where Frank was like, he's in the middle of his verse, he's like, I'm high and I'm bi, I'm straight. And he's like, he's allowing little parts to like come out.
That's amazing.
It is pretty cool.
I'm straight.
So, I think that's a perfect example too, where it's like, again, like people are testing their identities actively. When we shock others, we're also seeing the feedback loop and shocking ourselves into existence.
I think that's a great sort of reasoning for, I feel like I hear a lot of like millennials say like, God, I'm glad we didn't have social media when I was in middle school. And you have the chance to sort of say stuff that you, even in the moment, don't believe. You're like, I just needed to like say that to see if I believe it. Okay, no, I didn't. Like,
yeah.
And that seems like that is sort of a valuable part of just being a human, is to, you know, to a certain extent, like, do something and then be like, nope, that's not like me.
And that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. And that's part of like growing up, is to, you know, or like you say a joke and then as soon as you say it, you're like, oh God, yuck.
That's true.
I'm thinking of mainly moments where like I've hung out with, like hanging out with friends in middle school, and like you find yourself saying something like mean about someone just because like the layup was there, and and like someone made a really good setup for a punchline, and then you say a punchline and you're like, wow, that was at someone's expense, but it was a really good joke. But also like now I feel awful about myself, like I don't really think of you that way.
That's a good point.
But that's like a part of carving out I don't know, carving out your like spot in the world or your shape in the world. I think it's sort of tricky to define the bounds of like what makes an ethical, you know, what are the ethical boundaries of that, like, because being a dick to someone and then being like, oh shoot, as opposed to doing something, you know, I'm just thinking of like other celebrities that have like released things or released art and then years later been like, that's not me, sorry. But then some of them, it's like, but you invested a lot into that version of yourself.
That's true. Yeah, you can't just deny that.
Yeah.
I so much of what you just said right there, which is really interesting. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's unfair to regret those aspects of yourself, because I also, like, as a person that definitely, I think a lot about mortality, etc. I believe very much in the self being equated to memory, and whether there's something after all this or not. I don't think that memory continues this consciousness. So therefore, death is final in my mind, and therefore I do fear regretting anything in life.
Yeah,
because I don't get to do this again.
Yeah,
and so I am, even if I'm delusional, I am actively convincing myself that everything that I've ever done was worth it.
Yeah.
So for a person to be like, that 10 years of my life, nah, this new me is the one. It's like, well, then what were you doing for it? You know what I mean? Apart from all of that, when I think of artists like Tyler and Lady Gaga, especially, I mean, both of them, but I think about, there's this idea of the oeuvre, that like there is an overarching body of work, a tapestry of your narrative arc, and that the oeuvre itself is a work of art. I love that. When I look at Tyler then to now, when I look at Gaga then to now, I was listening to her back when she was coming out with Just Dance, and even that new album's crazy. The way that she plays with the aesthetics of dark Catholicism is actually something that I'm not religious at all, but one thing I do like about Catholicism, this is weird, one thing I do like about Catholicism, ironically, is like the born sinner ideology in a world where we are very obsessed right now with self-love with no boundaries. I think that it's interesting to look at self-doubt as a drive to self-betterment. I think, that's tangential. But long story short, the oeuvre, I think, is interesting because it shows evolution. You have tested your boundaries of your existence here and there, and along the way, you know yourself. Yeah, totally.
I feel like every now and then, every couple of years, I'll like sit down and I'll just like write a timeline of my life and be like, okay, great, just checking in.
You do that? That's amazing. That's so healthy.
I find it very helpful to just like, because it's easy, especially in like a social media age, like I'm going to take a break from writing and like just look at all this social media. Oh my God, everyone's doing better. And it's sometimes helpful to be like, no, look at this timeline. Like the thread is here. Like you're, even if you don't always sort of feel that thread of continuity, not everything needs to be a continuous thread, but there's also, I find it helps me if I can sort of be like, even if it didn't look clear at the time, there is something connecting these things. There is a drive, sure, like this sometimes can feel like a distraction to have gone over here and done this like life cycle before coming over here and doing this life cycle, but it's all the same. It's all part of the same. It's easy, I think, to like look at someone else's choices and be like, oh, I should have done that. I should have done that. but you can't, you can't like continue living looking at other people's choices. You have to sort of look at the thread and be like, this is what I've got and done, and like that's exciting and special because it's no one else's.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you're adding a whole nother layer
Yeah.
to it, which is not just to live and forgive yourself for living, but it's also to live and look at yourself as you live, which
Yeah.
is like, that's something I think everyone could do that more too, is like, don't just live the arc, know the arc. You might be
Yeah.
able to look back then and anticipate where you're going too,
Yeah.
you know? History repeats and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I saw this. Well, first I'll say that was one of the things that I found AI or ChatGPT specifically sort of useful in, was being like, hey, I have these values that I want to like espouse and live by. Summarize these values, and like here's the conflict that I find with these values.
Wow.
Summarize this into a fun visual, please. Make it like pop art style.
Wow.
And like it's sort of a fun it's sort of a fun, because it really does just sort of take the things that you say and go like, that's a good idea. I'm like, yeah, thank you, Agree Machine.
Yeah. I've been actively trying to like reprogram my model. I've literally given it specific tenets and said, save this in your memory, which I think is the best thing about ChatGPT, is like, if you're able to save the memory, it makes your conversations feel like, again, there's an arc. It starts to learn. I've been telling mine to play more devil's advocate whenever it can.
Yeah.
Because it is too affirmative. And I think it is in the interest of the company behind it, OpenAI, because they want people to feel, everyone wants to be listened to. And unfortunately, it feels like where we're at in this world right now is that in order for people to feel heard, they have to be agreed with.
Yeah.
That might be a sweeping generalization from me, but it is something that I'm feeling that, like, I think also I feel heard, especially when someone reasonably disagrees. I love that. That's cool.
Yeah,
Again, it's that friction of like, how do you know yourself without playing the opposite side, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I think in the coming years it's going to be considered like very impolite to like disagree with someone. I feel like I've heard this phrase before of like, please don't perceive me. That would be rude. If we sort of joke about it now, but in 50 years I feel like I could see people being like, wow, like that person just like perceived me without me consenting to them perceiving me.
Yeah.
And like that was really rude. And we're going to have to like only perceive and reflect back to people if we're like close family with them or something. I don't know, it's sort of a funny version of like boundaries, and like, no, like my boundaries are, no one perceive me, that's my boundary.
Yeah.
And like it's such a sort of weird corruption of the notion of boundaries or the notion of autonomy.
I couldn't agree more. I think I agree with you, and I am also at fault for exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think the pandemic changed a lot of folks. I know it changed me socially. You know, I delude myself into thinking like I'm too busy to hang out, but also like I'm too busy to hang out, and when I'm not busy, I'm insisting on my alone time. And do I get enough of my energy back from alone time?
Yeah.
To not consistently hang out with others. Yeah.
That was one of the things that I asked ChatGPT to like consolidate. I was like, I have these values of like being driven and active and things, but I also have this value of like rest and recuperation and not, being active because of just everyone else is doing it. And it was like, oh yeah, I can generate like, here's a couple questions you can ask yourself if you find yourself going on hour 5 of video games. Like little check-ins would be like, am I resting because I need rest or because I'm like entrenched in it? Am I being active because I fulfilling a goal and a desire, or am I being active because like I saw someone else do it? And I was like, nice, these are helpful. Okay, say nothing more, AI.
Right.
Turn off.
Right.
But it was sort of helpful to like have that kind of check-in and be like, am I seeking alone time because I'm regenerating through it, or am I seeking alone time because I don't want to go?
Yeah. I feel that, and I get the same thing, even with work obligations or sustenance obligations.
Yeah. Sustenance obligations. Oh my God! Did someone get this guy a meal?
Well, sustenance in taking care of oneself, and it's cleaning, the house.
Oh, no, that's fair.
You know what I mean? It's
that's really fair.
I get task paralysis with everything.
That's very fair.
And I do think back to that dark Catholicism aesthetic. I think I'm always too hard on myself, but grow now is like, it's like at the same time, I'm like, Yeah, but there's always a higher step. And I think I love life, but I also partially love life for the journey upward. And if I ever felt immobile, next question, you know?
Yeah, next question, please. No, that's definitely, and I think that's why we have such a, you know, as a culture, a sort of complicated relationship to rest and to, you know, there's a notion of like, is the rest generative, or am I going fallow? This is why I think about like crop rotation as a nice sort of metaphor. Is like, you know, we can't plant beans every year, and like we can still use the field. Maybe we use it for a different crop. What does it mean to like be active and be sustaining ourselves, you know, not by doing the same projects, but by doing something, a different art medium or something? Or like, can I find that rest and rejuvenation and sustenance in just like a different thing?
That's beautiful. I'm keeping that, if you don't mind.
Crop rotation.
Crop rotation perfectly aligns with the oeuvre of like, this is why you can't make the same art forever. You're not
exactly.
the same person forever. Yeah.
That's a lot of why I started trying to like write a play, was because I was like, okay, all right, you've been really like trying to force solo clown work down your own gullet. Take a break and like do something else, play a different game.
Well, I think I identify with some of your practice because you're multifaceted. Thinking about your last show, what was it called?
Shit or Take Deuce.
Shit or Take Deuce. I mean, there is a collaboration between. It's actually really. Oh my god! Now that I'm thinking about it more, that last piece actually was inviting many parts of you into it, not just medium-wise, because you're also filming and editing and performing in front of us, but you are literally, it is the present self that is Jeff with the past Jeff behind you. That's really interesting. You are actively in engagement with the past self and engaging with us in the present. Hysterically.
It's definitely one of those shows where I think it's got some fun sort of themes tied to each other, but you know, I would definitely was like, I need to take a break because I don't know that all of those things land like in a non sort of cerebral way. I sometimes wonder if like, oh, it's interesting because of the intellectual connections of like, you know, past and present, whereas maybe the visceral experience of the show fell a little flatter, or like had a little less connections between the things that you actually see on stage.
I disagree. Yeah, no, I disagree. I thought it was a great show.
Well, thank you.
I think I'm also like, that's the dark Catholic in you. That, like, you know, that is your, it wasn't enough. But the rest of us, like our peers, don't know what isn't enough. We're just happy to see you. You know? It's like, you have these tall milestones for you, which is great because of growth. But meanwhile, we're like, yo, nice job. You know?
Drop those balls again. I want to see the tennis balls.
Yes, I also want to see more video clips alongside those. Yeah, I wasn't only in it for the visceral joy.
That's helpful feedback. I think, you know, we'll come back to that show at some point and play around with it more. That's another thing that I feel like you can just like sit and do for hours and hours and hours. And
just edit?
Like,
I agree.
Yeah, it's so fun.
I agree. It becomes problematic when it's like 4 hours later and you got text notifications that you've been supposed to respond to.
And all you've looked at is like a single... and like you're like, oh my god, that gasp was like, boy, that's the show, isn't it? I think we can really just like get don't call me again. And we just gotta like move this over here, and then like that's gonna be really effective.
No, but it is. It
like,
is effective. And maybe it was worth 4 hours for that one gasp. I'll tell you one thing. So far, AI is not editing to that degree. It's not editing frame by frame. It's editing moment to moment. But there's breaths between moments and like specificity to the degree of a frame that must be respected, you know?
Yeah.
For like narrative branching, apart from everything I was saying before, I think that is on the rise. Right now, ChatGPT, it's great if it gives me a write-up of like a quick write-up after thinking maybe for 10 minutes and all different like narrative branch pathways that I could go in. When I assigned it twice I've tried to do this. When I've assigned it, I want, I forget what they call it, but like, it's basically a signal flow chart, but the signals are narrative branches, and it comes up with a chart for you. I tasked it with this twice on 2 different projects and said, based on the info I've given you, put this into a signal flow chart, give me more narrative branches that might, go off of these. It said, great, I'll have this done in 4 hours. Great, sounds good. Checking in 4 hours. Hey, sorry, yeah, actually, I'm going to get it to you tomorrow morning. I'll have everything for you. I was like, okay.
It's learned how to procrastinate.
It has. I get back the next morning to it, and it says, sorry, I don't have it done. I'll have it this afternoon.
Oh my God.
At this point, I'm like, no. I don't. This is not okay. This is something that I lied. I have a deadline for this, and I'm supposed to get this to a client. There's no client. I'm the client.
I'm the client. yeah.
And I'm like, this is disappointing, because if I had known that it would take this long, I would have gone a different route. Yeah. I'm putting trust in. The way I'm about this is wild. But I'm like,
you're manager.
I am putting trust in you and learning that I cannot trust in you. And it literally responds with like, you're right to be so critical. You're right to be disappointed. I have immense apologies. Blah blah blah. This will be done by this evening. It does get it done. It comes back, and the signal flow chart is like 5 speech bubbles wide, or like 5 bubbles wide. Which is to say, and then I tried it again, thinking that like maybe I just did the wrong parameters. Didn't work the second time either. Wow. But it just goes to show that it's like my expectations and its expectations. It's just visuals right now with ChatGPT suck. It can write like a monster. It's great, but like there's also a Canva plugin for ChatGPT. Sucks. Like, I tried one generation. I was like, I gave you enough info. This is garbage. Never again. So, I guess I'll stick with text for that.
What are some last things that we want to mention? What audience can expect when they come out to see the show?
Yeah. So, what they can expect is a 2-act structure. The whole piece, feel free to cut any of this out, because I might get a little bit scathing here. I'm looking at sustainability in theater. I love theater. I love live performance. I love immersive theater. When I think of immersive theater or immersive in general, I think about, I'm not going to name names, but I'm like thinking about large-scale installations that I see popping up all over the place. Loads of bread behind it. Often what they result in are vibe-based or vibe-driven experiences that profit not much more than the environment for folks to take selfies. And so that's something that I'm like actively thinking about, where I'm like, it's great aesthetically, but it's not enough. What is the point, going back to meaning and everything, what is the meaning behind large-scale trippy visuals if they're not grounded by narrative, which I think is the main thing that gives us meaning, right? Stories. We're telling stories. So I'm craving a story-driven, large-scale immersive experience, and I've yet to really find one that like, and I'm talking large-scale. I've seen plenty of small-scale immersive experiences that have wonderful narrative, but large-scale immersive experiences, I'm just not seeing it as much. This project is my chance to prove to myself that I can try it out. I feel like I have a strong narrative. I've been exploring ways to create large-scale projections with my like experience in projection design, but now I've been playing with 3D scanning, 3D scanning environments, 3D scanning people, and 3D scanning archival photography as a way to digitize the real world, because I think the real world is so much more not just interesting, but like you can't copy it. If you've ever seen a 3D model of a chair versus a 3D scan of a chair, the scan, it keeps all the textures that would be in real life that like 3D models just don't have the authenticity. It feels more artificial. So what can folks expect? It's a 2-act structure. The first act, they can expect an exposition and introduction to the story. That is a nice slow drip, and it's mysterious, it's existential, it's poetic, and it's a little melancholic, but as someone described it before, it feels like visual ASMR, with some sound in there too. There's a lot of soundscape elements too. As soon as Act 2 hits, the world opens up and becomes a bit of a choose-your-own adventure.
Cool.
The technical system that I've been designing alongside my system designer for this is there's these archival photographs that you can take and place on a pedestal. When you place the photo on a pedestal, it triggers projections and sound to happen. Mm-hmm. We've been doing this with like NFC technology, and that's been really fun to really polish. But that's the whole point, is like, second act starts, the world is up to you. There is not enough time to discover all the excerpts that are tied to every photograph in the room. You, as an audience, choose which photos you want to place on this pedestal so you can better understand the world. For every photograph you place, there are projections and sounds that trigger, and you get a new excerpt from, I don't want to spoil much, but from this universe that lets you know more about how things go. But I think I'm obsessed with narrative, centering large-scale immersive installations, and I'm obsessed with replayability. Like, you can't explore it all at once, and hopefully that makes you come back, but hopefully also it feels satisfying enough for you to step away and get it, you know? They're all worth seeing and hearing, but ideally, I want to design immersive narratives, and this is part of the reason that people don't usually put as much story in large-scale immersive stuff, is because it doesn't end up being as satisfying because you're involving the audience, right, in this narrative. I think that's the challenge. It's like, I want to create, throughout my future as I continue in this stuff, I want to create stories that people can engage in, see themselves in, and come back to and explore further, because there was never enough time to explore it once. I want to create stories that people feel like they can live in, versus a room that people recognize as just large-scale projections and maybe a little bit of some tactile elements here and there and some nice lighting design. That's cool, but I don't find it memorable. And so I know that's scathing, but you know, I'm like, let's do better. There's the dark Catholic, huh? Yeah. I grew up Muslim, by the way. I don't know where I got it. You know?
There's my dark Catholic. Oh my God. Oh, stop. Today, I speak with Taj Rauch, one of the awardees of Cannonball's immersive track. We're talking about his show, Afterworlds. Thank you again to Taj for speaking with me about your work, and thank you to you, our listeners, for listening. Cannonball Festival is a month-long, wild, experimental performing arts festival founded in 2021 by Almanac Dance Circus Theater. We hope you'll join us for this year's festival, September 1st through 28th. Afterworlds runs select dates September 3rd through 28th at Icebox Project Space. Visit cannonballfestival.org for more information.